Really excited to have you guys here today. Basically, we just wanted to go through all of the opportunities that have been made available by some new laws under the Jobs Act, which allow for equity crowdfunding. So StartEngine is an equity crowdfunding platform that's specifically designed to help you raise in either, specifically for equity, you can also do other types of terms, which we'll go through. And then we're really happy to be here with Enventys and Enventys Partners and the crowdfunding team here because while StartEngine is a platform, we're not a marketing company. So, and obviously marketing is a really important aspect of actually raising your capital. So I'm going to talk about the laws, and then we have Megan who's going to talk about the marketing and the strategies behind that. So, as a way of introducing this whole concept, what's possible here is you've got a company like Saunders Electric Car. It's a 3-wheeled car, and the dream was, let's build the most attractive, affordable electric car ever. It was a brand new company. It was incorporated in September of 2016, and their campaign ran from October to December of 2016. So it was a brand new company that didn't have really much more than a concept and a team behind it. The team was experienced, but not in electric cars specifically. We'll get into that a little bit more. They raised $1 million on a $33 million pre-money valuation from 1,626 investors.
Was that a Reg CF?
It was, so what we call a small OPO. So what they used is a small OPO, under which you can raise currently up to $1.07 million per year. And the raises are open to the general public. So those 1,600 investors, they're all what we call non-accredited, not all actually, mostly what we call non-accredited investors, which means that they're not the traditional investors who have over $1 million in the bank. They didn't need to be qualified by the SEC, which means that they do have to file with the SEC, but it doesn't require back and forth qualification, as some of the larger raises do. In order to sign up, the Form C includes basic legal disclosures, a 2-year independent CPA review if you're raising over $100,000, and then you can do all your soliciting of investments online once the raise is live, and then the shares become tradable after a year.
So, back up for a second. So this 2-year independent CPA review, that means you have to have been active or in process for 2 years before you...
But they were only in process for a month, so how do you do that? It's since inception. So if your company has been around for 2 years or more, it's going to be 2 years. If it's been around for less than 2 years, it's just going to be since the day that you incorporated.
The date that you incorporate. So if you've been working on something for 2 years but just incorporate, that's when the start time begins.
Exactly, yes.
Ah.
Yeah, so yeah, if you might have thought of this idea 10 years ago and you've been noodling on it, it doesn't really mean anything until you actually incorporated and started doing business.
And CPA review is not that expensive, right? It's not
really
close
isn't.
to an audit.
No, it's not close to an audit at all. It's a fraction of the price.
Yeah.
It depends on the company though. So if you are, for example, a young company that has almost nothing on your sheets, if it's just a lot of zeros, sometimes people will call me and say, I don't have anything for the CPA to put in there. You still have to do it because the SEC requires that the numbers be available for review, even if they're zeros. So in the case of Saunders, the review was a bunch of zeros with certifications. I certified that this is a zero. There's nothing in, there's nothing out. And that's actually become quite common in our space. There are some investors who are only going to invest in companies with that they have a confident history. And there's other investors, obviously. The ones that invested in Saunders were investing based on the CEO's past experience and his successes, and they felt good about that, and they were okay with this being at the kind of very, very basic level. And they're actually excited about it because it means that they got in on the real ground floor. Were there any other questions about this? I'd love for you guys to speak out just as you have done.
You're about to get the shares tradable after 1 year. If you could go into detail on that.
Absolutely. So after a year, right here, under a small OPO, the shares are locked for a year in a cool-off period. In other words, if you've just done a raise, if you've just done a raise, welcome, at maybe $1 per share, and the raise is really successful, and then you actually fill up that 1.07, and there's nothing else available for investors to buy, and there's suddenly new demand, those investors might want to turn their shares over immediately for $2 a share. The problem with that is that there's an inflation there and an excitement that the SEC doesn't want. They don't want that to happen, because just because you did a great job marketing your campaign doesn't mean your company is definitely worth a lot more.
I guess, what if you go public within that 12-month period?
Oh, if you go public, then you're public.
And those shares are,
Yeah.
they're not tradable as a private company, for example.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question, so I should clarify. When I say tradable, I don't mean that they're on the stock market. So the company, even with tradable shares, they're tradable within the confines of what this deal was, and it's not suddenly a public company. So there's a limitation there. So the tradability would actually be through either a secondary trading platform, which are being built, and StartEngine's building one as well for our companies, or just through, if you knew somebody and you wanted to trade in the shares, you could do it online, and it wouldn't be difficult. You just would not be allowed to do that within the year. There's very few exceptions, like in the result. There's certain exceptions, but they're rare. So there's a difference in this with the large OPO. So under the large OPO, which we won't focus on too much for this presentation, because it's really the second step after the small one, you can raise up to $50 million. Similarly, the raises are open for general public. You do need to have the SEC qualify your offering, which means that they're going to go back and forth with you. Your legal fees are going to be pretty high for this, at least about $50,000 compared to maximum $5,000 over here. Yes?
Are there any limitations on or restrictions on how a company needs to be structured in order to participate in as well as an LLC or an S corp, or does that matter at all?
No, there isn't a restriction. You do have to be incorporated. C corps have it the easiest because, for example, at tax time, LLCs will have to do K1s for every investor. If you have 1,600 investors, that would be frustrating. We do have LLCs raise capital, but I would say probably about 50% of the LLCs that come our way decide to convert to a C corp before launching their campaign.
So why C over S?
With a lot of little reasons. Usually it's just a better fit for the company in other ways. Yeah. So under a large OPO, the Form 1A, as opposed to the Form C, is a lot more extensive. And it does require a 2-year audit, so that's going to be more expensive. So at the least you're going to end up spending on this for just legal and financial is going to be about $70,000. And then you're also going to want to make sure, if you're spending that money, that you have a nice large marketing budget. So typically, only if your company, you already have a huge community of people that are reading your newsletters and opening, or you already have a lot of money to spend at the beginning, which we do have companies go straight to the large OPO if it's a fit for them. If not, we typically recommend that you start with a small OPO, start getting people familiar with equity crowdfunding with you. You can start really, really small. If your maximum is under $107,000, you don't need the CPA review, and we don't require a legal sign-off either, which means that you can start with literally nothing and get started slowly and build that snowball. So maybe you start with raising $15,000, take some of that money, put it back in. Now you have $50,000, take some of that money, put it back in. Now you have $100,000. Now you know crowdfunding is working for you, and you have $100,000 to run your business with, and also to put back into raising a larger amount of money. And then once you get up to $1 million, that's when you end up reevaluating. And for many of our companies who have gone through the process of raising $1 million and have been successful and reached the max, they never want to go back to VC capital again. They just want to keep doing it, because if you can raise $50 million per year while marketing your company, that's a better situation for a lot of people.
So the accredited investors versus not. On a small OPO, they don't have to be, but do they have to answer questions when they subscribe for like 5,000? Do they have to answer like a StartEngine questionnaire saying that this is that I basically can afford $5,000.
Yes, exactly.
But
So yes,
that's their issue.
yeah, so you can be a non-accredited investor for both small and large OPOs. OPO stands for Online Public Offering, so it is available to anybody. Everybody, with the exception of certain types of criminals, can invest up to $2,000, and nobody can invest more than $100,000. So this is really significantly more democratic way of doing things. Actually, the 100,000 max only applies in the small. Under a large, there's no maximum if you're accredited. So,
Is the company controlling whether or not they're accepting accredited investors only, or is that decided by the platform, or the offering, or?
well, at StartEngine, if somebody only wants accredited investors, they're just not a fit for us. That's a choice. So, for example, the Select OPO is something we offer, which is only available to accredited investors. We usually use that or recommend that as a bridge between the small and large, because it'll take a few months to open your large OPO, and you already have StartEngine campaign. So if somebody who's accredited comes across it, you want them to be able to invest if they want to. So we may have you open a Select OPO kind of in the interim before you open your large one. But yeah, if you want to raise just from accredited investors, there's other platforms you can go to, like Circle Up, Crowdfunder, and in those cases, in order to even view the opportunities, an investor has to go through a process of being approved. So that's a more select group, and if you're going to do a non-accredited investor, an accredited investor only raise, you're not going to be able to market it. So you can't go out wide, you can't do ads, you can't solicit to other people. So that's something to keep in mind. If it's really crowdfunding, it's going to probably be letting non-accredited investors in. There's a slight difference over here with the large OPO, which is that you can talk to investors before you go live in what's called the test the waters phase. And the shares become tradable immediately after the offering. So as soon as you close on the deal, and if you're an investor and you've just received your shares, you can trade those immediately if you want to. You're less likely going to see the situation where a company maxes out because the cap is $50 million, so they're not quite as worried about that situation. Any other questions about the 3 types of raises we do at StartEngine?
So what's the general understanding if an accredited investor comes and says they wanted to invest in a small OPO, the company is just saying they go through the portal directly?
Yes.
And just invest through the portal just as anyone else would, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to do a separate funding, let's say somebody came in and said, I want different terms, I want a board seat, I'll give you $500,000,
Right.
and then you can absolutely do that on the side. Or you can say invest through the platform.
So we're considering kind of called the PPM offering that we want to do alongside StartEngine. That would have a minimum of like 20,000. And then we would market that ourselves. And if someone says, well, geez, for whatever reason, I only want to do a few thousand, we would then direct them to StartEngine. And the only difference would be some warrant coverage on the PPM.
Mm-hmm.
So that's perfectly okay to do it that way, right?
Yes, that's definitely okay, but you have to be careful about how you talk to them. So this is a new set of laws, and there's a lot of gray area. So one thing I've learned that I guess I wasn't quite aware of is the Jobs Act was signed into law in 2012, and a lot of time has been spent since then on legislation just figuring out what these laws are going to be. And it's really not until they go into effect that we can start spotting all the areas where it doesn't always make sense. One area is that under the small OPO, you can't communicate directly with investors about the terms of the raise, which means that if you were in talks with somebody that you were talking about the opportunity for a PPM, and they said, well, I'm interested in maybe doing the crowdfunding, what are the terms? You wouldn't be able to tell them. So that's it's a little bit complicated there. However, you can say, here's an iPad, here's the page, you can read it. The spirit of the law is they want the same information to be available to everybody. So they don't want your accredited investor to be getting insider information that's not available to your non-accredited investors, which technically, even if you're telling them the same information that's true,
Right.
they don't want those private conversations to be happening. So,
It's my understanding you can run a Reg D at the same time, right? Is that right?
yes, so that's actually the select
That is-
OPO is
that
a
is-
Reg D,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Sorry, we're making it more confusing and
Right.
throwing in our own terminology too. Yeah, so you can do a Reg D at the same time. With StartEngine, we prefer you do both on our platform, so that we can split them. Typically what we recommend though is because the small OPO can be really public and you want to show success, that you actually would want to invite everybody to invest in the small OPO, and then only once you are going to overflow, we can create the select OPO and then start transferring investors over to it. But it's really that's a great situation to be in where you've got more than $1 million and people are more interested because they see that everybody else wants it, and then you start kind of pulling people out. You'll end up with more money that way. All right. So we want to be transparent about the advantages and the disadvantages of raising capital this way as compared to going through the traditional routes. So some of the advantages are you get to set your own terms, which means you're going to retain company control. So unlike the negotiation process, if anybody's watched Shark Tank or just been in a similar situation while running their business, you know that sometimes VCs and even angels can cut down the value of your company and those are their terms. With online equity crowdfunding, you set the terms and it's non-negotiable. So it is what it is. Everybody gets the same deal. It can make it a lot cleaner. And then one thing that our investors typically are not looking for is voting rights, and certainly not board seats, which means that even if you are selling them a good percentage of the company, you're still running it. And that's kind of cool. Hopefully most of your investors will be your customers as well, and you'll want to be lined up with what they're looking for, and you'll want to keep in touch with them, but you won't necessarily want them to make decisions for you.
The pace technology moves, what concerns me, or what I'm not clear on, waiting 2 years, you could miss your window. Are there any options? You said 2-year, you have to have a 2-year CPA review before you can do this.
No. It's if your company's been around for 2 years or more.
If you have 2 years of financials, so you can look.
Exactly, yeah. It's a
You
maximum
can do
of
it
2
tomorrow.
years.
You can incorporate today and do it tomorrow. You have financials that have zeros
That's where I
everywhere
was
except for
Okay.
a capital
Yeah.
company.
I lost.
No, the
It's the
company does
lesser
not
of-
have to
the
be 2
lesser
years.
of.
Yeah.
And if you're only raising a maximum of 100,000, if you want to get started, you don't even have to have any review. So, I mean, you do
Yeah,
have to
it's a
self-certify
review.
your review, but it's not with going through a CPA. So, my first example of a company had only been around for 1 month. You get to build an army of brand ambassadors, and I'm sure Megan will be able to talk about this as well. Your investors are going to become mouthpieces for your company, which is great. You've got more loyalty from people who are truly invested in the company, and they're more likely, if you've got these people who are going to benefit from your success, and you've got all their emails and you're sending them instructions on here's something to post to your Facebook, here's something to post to other social media. They're more likely to actually do that rather than not doing it. While you're raising capital, you're also marketing your company, and every company who does a raise experiences an increase in sales while they're raising. So the same marketing dollar that you would otherwise be spending just for sales, you're also getting working capital from, which is great. And then the raise maximum amount is permitted for every 12 months, which means that if you raise, let's say you close on $50,000 today, and then next month you close on $500,000, and then the next month, you would actually, as soon as you got back to today, you'd be able to do another $50,000. So you could almost always be raising capital if you wanted to. The disadvantages is that the transparency is required. Your financials are going to be public. You don't get to hide that stuff. It's also not easy. It takes focus and strategy. We found that one of the main indicators of success is how much time and energy the leadership is putting into it. And there's reporting obligations. So on a yearly basis for the small OPO and semi-annually for the large OPO, you do need to report your financials. So it's not, under the small OPO, it's not much different from what you would do for a group of investors anyway, but it does become public. It has to be listed somewhere on your website. Most companies will put it at the bottom where there's all the links about the about and various disclosures, you'll have a link there to the financials.
On the raised maximum amount permitted under rule every 12 months, I mean, what if you do a small OPO and then you liked it so much you want to then do a large OPO? Is that a 12-month wait?
No, so you can actually technically do 51.07 million per year if you did both.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
So it's every 12 months under each regulations. Okay, what does it cost? This is important. So over here, under the small OPO, if your maximum is $100,000, you can actually launch with nothing up front. So we do have some companies which will launch with the basic self-certified financials, will do everything themselves basically, will get their first $15,000 or $20,000, and then we'll immediately hire a marketing company to come in, perhaps do a bit of an overhaul on what they've done themselves, and then also start testing ads, getting on Google AdWords, Facebook ads, and making that happen. So what's really cool about that is they've already gotten, you've got to be able to get maybe the first 15 or 20,000 yourself if you're going to do it that way, but it is kind of a great thing that it can work that way. If you have $1 million maximum goal, you're going to be looking at probably a minimum of $1,500 for your financial review, maximum of $5,000 if it's really complicated. And then somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000 for your legal documentation. And if you're going to do this, you're probably going to want to start with a marketing team as well, so that you can get started right away. On the back end, our fees, we don't have any fees to list. We do have we take our fees as 6% of whatever it is you raise with StartEngine. And then we cover all of your escrow fees, and all the small incidentals are all included in that 6% fee from StartEngine. It's cleaner that way.
What's a typical minimum to close, or is there on a small OPO?
We have a standard actually, which is $10,000.
Oh, it's just a 10,000.
Yeah, because of the way the law requires two numbers to be displayed, the minimum and the maximum, and that gets really confusing, and people weigh it for different reasons. We decided to standardize a $10,000 minimum so that it doesn't look as significant. And then we've also found that that's a really good number for companies, even if you're ultimately going to raise $1 million. Sometimes early on, it's just nice to be able to make a disbursement of a small amount of money. We also have an optional consulting fee, which I can talk more about, but that's $4,000, and there's just a lot more help from StartEngine side for consulting on your valuation and your terms, making sure that everything is lining up, using some of the things we've learned.
How long can your, speaking of time, can the thing be sitting there, your campaign? What's the max? Is it like?
Oh, I think the maximum is 12 months.
It is 12 months.
Yeah, but that's not a great strategy. You want it to be shorter because the spikes are typically the beginning and the end of the raise. Sometimes we have companies who set a 60-day and then they get close to the end and then they actually file an amendment and extend it, so they end up with a spike towards the stated end that they amend. Okay, over here, large OPO, we talked about this a little bit. The legal can be $25,000 to $50,000. Accounting, I've never actually, I don't know who made this, $5 or $5,000 is really, I guess, for a brand new company. We don't usually see that though, because brand new companies usually start over here. So realistically, for a company that's got something going on their financials, it's going to be higher. The back end costs here, we take a slightly different way of taking our fee, because we can't do a success fee, so it's a per investor fee, or you can do a flat rate per month. And then there are additional escrow fees that are not included in the fee that goes to us. If you want to hire a broker-dealer, you can do that. It allows you to make phone calls or have the broker-dealer make phone calls. That tends to be expensive, but it does work for some companies. And then for the select OPO, because the investors are all accredited, the price per investment goes from $50 to $200. But that's regardless of the size of the investment. So if you think about the average investment maybe being $20,000 to $50,000, $200 fee per investor is not bad.
How do you advertise? How do you find investors when you're doing this for multiple companies? What's that, once you decide to do this, then what happens?
Okay, Megan is gonna go into depth with that, yeah. There's a lot of ways. So basically, what is the investment process? If you're an investor, first you can search for companies that interest you. Then you can open your campaign page, any campaign page that you're interested in, watch the video, read up on the story, and then click Invest Now, and put your payment information. It's actually really easy. I talked to a guy yesterday, I had a meeting with investors, who doesn't own a computer. He found out about the first opportunity via a radio ad, and then got curious, has invested in several companies, and he just uses his phone. So it's that easy, and he said, I've never had any kind of problem doing that. It was pretty cool. Key statistics that you might be interested in, I get questions about this. So currently we have over 85,000 investors, and 17,000 of those have invested in one or more companies. We have raised over $30 million for 40 companies since June 2015. The average investment per investor is $1,500, $1,502. So that's pretty low when you're talking about investing. It's pretty high when you're talking about crowdfunding, but it's kind of an interesting number. So if you think about $1,500, then you go think about how many people do I have to reach to get my number, and that's how you can kind of structure your marketing plan. The average raise under a large OPO is $4.7 million. Under a small one, $389,000. So when people ask me, what will I raise? Depending on, I usually take into consideration what kind of a company they have, but with a good marketing plan and a decent company, you'll probably be able to raise $300,000. If you're starting small, maybe $50,000 is great for you. If you're going all out, let's get you to $1 million. On average, StartEngine brings in about 30% of the investors into any given offering. So our investors are going back, like the guy without the computer. He is going on his phone and he's scrolling every time we send out a newsletter with our whole list of opportunities. They are looking.
Are you sending those opportunities to just investors, or is it out to anyone? Because I've subscribed to a couple of other platforms, and so and just applying and going halfway through the application, now I'm getting these deal flow newsletters, but I hadn't necessarily gotten any from StartEngine.
Well, were you applying as an accredited investor?
No, it was actually going through the process, and then I guess, one of the other companies, they just send it out to everybody. No matter, if they get an email address, it sends out. And I was just wondering how that works with StartEngine, because I noticed I would get periodic emails, but I don't get any emails in regards to these are the new deals that are on the site.
Well, we should talk about that, because technically we are supposed to be, every time we get it, if we have your email address, we do want to be sending you the opportunity.
Right.
That's our primary list. So we'll chat about that, because I might need to send something back to my marketing team. We do want everybody who comes to StartEngine and clicks invest on something, even if they don't complete the process, to be able to get emails from us and see new opportunities.
Right.
I have a question. How do you differentiate, determine whether someone is a StartEngine investor versus the 70% that you all aren't giving yourself credit for? I mean, what if I direct someone to StartEngine and then they sign up and become, they register with StartEngine? How do you?
Well, they have to register before they can invest.
Okay. Well,
so we do it based on the date that they registered. So if somebody signed up for StartEngine 3 months before you launched, we would consider that to be a StartEngine investor. So somebody who's already in our network, who received our email, and that's how they found out about you. If somebody signed up the same day that they invested in you, or within a few days, then we're going to count them as your investor. That's your community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although you don't know for sure, but you're...
Yeah, but we're pretty fair about it, yeah.
Yeah, you're maybe too fair.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be 30%.
But it's still 6%. You
Market
go get 6% of the fee regardless, right?
Oh, yes, we take a 6% fee regardless for the process.
I have another question. So from my research, you guys are like in second place as far as the amount of deals that you actually have on the site now. So how does that play against, just people, like you said, randomly just going to the site and seeing the deal versus going to another site and so forth?
How does it play?
I guess, in choosing Start Engine for the platform, I would assume just like setting up on the side of the street, you want as many cold calls or cold visits as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So what type of marketing do you guys do in addition to?
Well, what's interesting is our community is actually just as large as there's another company that has more actual deals on their platform, but a lower average raise per company.
Oh, really?
Yes, and we have the same size community.
Okay.
So our community is a little bit more curated. Our process for uploading companies is a lot more interactive with StartEngine itself. And what our deal types are significantly different. So we don't do what you call a safe note, which is, about the safe note. Yeah. So there's
What is
certain types of a safe note. It's a common instrument, but when it's used with crowdfunding, it basically means that the investor doesn't have value until there's an exit, whether it's an IPO or the sale or an exit. So when it comes to crowdfunding, it's really risky. It's called safe, but it's really not safe for these investors. And the SEC has started speaking out against it and published reports. We're not comfortable with the safe note. Were you planning on doing one?
No, it's similar to a convertible note, but then also there's no market cap.
Yeah.
To set a valuation, even at the point when the note converts. So it's a bad. When I was reading through the terms, I'm like, wow, this is kind of bad for the investors, but it's good for me. So.
Well, that's the thing so that's one way to get a lot of people raising their money on your platform,
Right.
is to offer something like that. The problem is that there could be a fallout, and it seems like there maybe is already starting to be one. So StartEngine is our brand. We're comfortable being where we are as far as the amount of money we've raised and the amount of companies we've helped and how well they've done. We're not really interested in doing something that's going to put our platform and the companies at risk for lawsuits, because if the SEC is coming out saying this type of deal is not fair, that's just a lawsuit waiting to happen. And if you've got 30 companies or 50 companies doing that, it's dangerous.
What percentage of the 85,000, you may not know this, are a member of some other community? Just because you would think, if I'm going to invest in these type of things, I want to broaden my deal flow, if you will. I'm going to maybe register for 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, you can't do them simultaneously on different platforms. You could do them
No,
whenever
not
you
as a company, as an investor.
I
Which
don't know
percentage
the
is
answer to that. I don't know how many. I imagine
Yeah, I mean, you
we've
would
got
think.
quite a few that would be getting into it and being interested. I don't know. We've never been able to. I guess we could send it. We could send out a survey, but we won't get 85,000 replies. So I don't know. There's no way of us knowing that yet. So yeah, in our last quarter we raised $8 million. The laws launched last May, and they had a slow start. A lot of gray areas, a lot of complicated processes. New technologies needed to be built to comply with the laws and to make things smooth. But it's really starting to pick up this year. A really strong Q1.
Is that attributable to any particular offering that's just killing it, or is it just a breadth
No.
of everything doing better given the regulations and legislation?
Yeah, I think it's across the board. In the last 5 months, we've had 5 companies go over $1 million. So it's become really standard that we've got a lot of companies doing well. And this is also, most of our business has gone from Reg A Plus to Reg CF, the smaller one. So there's a max. You can't raise more than that.
Right.
12% of our investors are repeat investors, which is a number we always want to grow, and which probably will grow, we hope. But we want to make sure that a lot of investors are diversifying, and hopefully we can actually lower the average investment so you have more investors at smaller amounts. That way you have a stronger base of the community. Okay, a few of our success stories. Elio Motors, that was our first big Reg A Plus, $16.9 million. Golf board, $1.8 million. Elliptico, $1 million. Highly, $1 million. The reason that we have these examples really is to talk a little bit about valuation, which we always get questions about. Elio had a $300 million pre-money valuation, and they still only have a prototype. Golf Board had an $8 million pre-money valuation, which became a really strong reason that they did so well. Their average investment was $15.65, and they're actually already valued at $20 million. So those investors are excited. Let's-to-Go had a $28 million pre-money valuation, Highly $25 million. The non-voting common stock is the most popular, and while Elio did have voting common stock, that really doesn't seem to make a difference to any of the investors. So if you're asking, should they have a vote, probably not worth the effort that it would take to get their votes. Okay, this one's really important, themes for success and failure. So our failures, because I'm on this side, no commitment from the top. If the person at the top, that's leading the company is too distracted with other things that they are doing for the company and doesn't assign and then put pressure on someone else to make sure that it's done well, the campaign is not going to be that successful, unfortunately. The idea that you'll do it for me, it's sort of like if you build it, they will come. It doesn't work with equity crowdfunding, it really doesn't. If you build it, they may have no idea that it is there at all. So you really have to make sure that you are planning on how you're going to get the word out. A high minimum target is also difficult. If your target is $300,000, you're going to struggle to get to the point where you're over it, and you're just going to struggle. And then unfair terms is also tough. Our investors, while the VCs will call them unsophisticated, they really are reading everything, and if they notice that the terms include things that are really to their disadvantage, they're likely to turn away from the deal. Success. Focused founder, the opposite of the other guy. Having a very compelling message, making sure that your messaging is really, really targeted towards the people you think are going to invest, and that you find a way to make sure that that message goes throughout your entire campaign, through all of your ads and your entire page. It's really an art, and it's awesome seeing people who do it really well. Making sure that you have fair terms, and then thinking out your whole marketing strategy. So making sure that you're utilizing email marketing, ads, event marketing, I guess gonna name more. Every possible way that you can get the word out, you want to do it. Okay, so how does it work exactly? You're going to complete your required paperwork we reviewed, create your campaign messaging, why should someone invest in your company, produce your message with your video and your written content, and then distribute it. That's the kind of, yeah, you should take a picture of that one. This is really all it is. It's so simple.
$1 million.
Yeah, and you're done.
From looking at the different campaigns, they all have their terms, right? And that terms document is like 20 some odd pages long. Who's creating that?
So our back end actually generates that.
That
So
28-page document.
So yeah, so we have templates and examples, and if you log into StartEngine and you look through we've got 8 tabs. The first 5 are all marketing. That's how important that is. The last 3 are they're just fields that you fill out, and it's going to generate into one large Form C, which we file with the SEC for you. So it's just all those bites and pieces. You can hire a lawyer to do it for you, but we have designed it to be so that you can do it yourself, or that you could at least maybe just call a lawyer with a few specific questions about specific aspects, while you can actually handle the other parts yourself.
Okay.
On the previous slide, you said, high minimum target.
Mm-hmm.
You also said you can close the round at 10K. Are you still setting a minimum target that's defined by you? Or is
Yes, but that would be your maximum target.
Maximum, okay, cool.
Yeah, so the minimum target, that's why we really recommend the 10K.
Threshold,
It just gives you freedom to disperse when you want to. So while your race continues to go on, it may make a big difference to you to be able to take $50,000 out. And if your maximum is $50,000, you're probably not going to be able to take that out until the very end. And you won't be able to use it, and it just is not a great strategy.
Do you have enough campaigns and data at this point to say, like, who is this right for? All the 4 of those examples were disruptive consumer tech products, but we see stuff for energy companies, recycling, solar, this, that, and the other, and it doesn't seem like everything is right to raise capital.
Yeah,
in that way,
you know,
obviously.
We find groundbreakers all the time. So we do have a solar company that's raised about 3 million so far. They're planning on getting to 11 million by fall. They're not a consumer product. They're using the money to buy a giant particle accelerator. They had to hire Bill Nye to explain what they do,
Cool.
which is still complicated.
And we're a biotech, we would probably be the first biotech that you all have.
We love biotech though, because we haven't seen a strong, we expect that biotech will do really well because it tends to serve niche, I mean, I don't know exactly what you guys are doing, but you tend to have a niche community of people that really care about what you're developing. And that's important because being able to identify those people is more important really than what kind of people you're trying to identify.
And yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's about how compelling the offering is, and it doesn't really matter what, you know, the investment opportunity is, as long as there's.
Yeah, well,
Well,
that's for some companies. For some companies, it's just about having a good opportunity, whether or not you care. I've talked to some investors who say, yeah, you know, it just looked like a good deal. Maybe they'll do a good job. I don't really know that much about what they do. They're making vegan products, and I'm not vegan, but cool. And then you have other companies who are like, I only want to invest in green tech. I only want to invest in things that are going to make the environment better. And then you've got people who just, I like robots.
Sure.
I'd say it's still too early to know exactly who it's right for.
There's nothing that you guys would say, like, just turn away out of the nature of the business or industry or vertical that they're in?
There are. I'd certainly turn some of these away.
Sure.
Yeah, it depends on exactly what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, if it's just super complicated, like a SaaS product, then yeah, that's probably not going to work. But then again, somebody with a really like a cute way of showing their SaaS product and then a good deal, they might actually do well. So yeah, we get surprised. We thought this was going to be mostly just a tech platform, and transportation was the first one that really hit. So we'll see. Now we're getting a run in fashion companies now all of a sudden. Okay. I think we kind of covered this. Do you guys have any more questions about this stuff?
I guess, so all the platforms mentioned, you know, due diligence, right? So in going through the webinar, and it was talking about, I guess, just the main thing that will eliminate someone in the due diligence process is, I guess, just a bad actor, right?
Yes.
The burner got out of jail and tried to run,
Yeah.
tried to create something, then that would exclude, that would be the exclusionary point, right?
Well, you can have been in jail. You can't have been in jail for securities fraud.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Back again.
Yeah, that's it. So he's talking about a bad actor is not a reference to, you know, I won't name any specifics in Hollywood. But a bad actor is somebody who has a bad record, who has done some bad acts against the SEC. And so that is we do a special background check on anybody who owns more than 20% of the company, or is considered a director or officer of the company. So even if they don't own it, if they are your COO or something like that, they need to be reviewed as well to make sure that they don't have any history of violating SEC codes.
How does that work for international people that live abroad?
That's fine. Yeah, you don't have to be an American. The company has to be incorporated in the U.S.
Yeah. But one of my founders, they reside overseas. So.
As long as they're not on any like watch lists in America, they will be fine.
Okay.
So the Form C, how complicated is that?
The Form C is.
I mean, what's
Depends on who
basic
you are.
disclosure?
We've had people who have no problem with it. Other people struggle more. It also depends on your company and how
You
complicated.
list your risk factors on that?
Yes. And so when you go into the back end of the platform, we have the section for risk factors, and we've got a bunch of standard risk factors, and you can just say yes or no, and that gets added in. And then you'll also want to write in your own risk factors. When you enter due diligence, which is after everything is completed, you get they reply to you within 48 hours with notes on every single thing. So anything that they think you need to flesh out more, there's no risk factor here. This risk factor is only a sentence long and it needs to be more specific, that kind of thing. And that'll go for all of your documents. And then you will be able to address those and go back and Usually it takes about 3 rounds of back and forth before it's ready, but it is nice to have that support.
So this is more of a, I mean, again, the SEC is not reviewing this on the Form C. This is just your own legal protection and all that.
Well, we are a registered funding portal through FINRA, so we are required to do this. Yeah. So, and then the funding portals have to register in that way so that they can do their due diligence process prior to things going on.
I would assume that, I mean, obviously, technology can help us, but the accounting component gets fairly complex when you have a lot of people with small dollar amounts. Is that done on your portal so you can measure who owes what percentage, and then if you're using another portal to raise more money, how do you manage that process?
So that is one of the most complicated things. If you have, for example, had a lot of maybe unpaid interns helping you and you're giving them percentages of the company or some kind of stock in the company for their work, that's going to get really complicated, and you're probably going to want to hire an accountant to help you figure that out. As far as our back end, we have a place for each name and then a place for each percentage. So we don't have a tool that will actually do the math for you. That's something that should be a part of your cap table already. So you will need to create a cap table. We have a place to put it. We have an example of a cap table that you can fill in, but we don't have a way to figure that out for you yet. But if you have any ideas how we could do that, I'd be happy to hear them.
So you would just give kind of name, contact information, and amount invested and you give that to the company that they then can feed into the cap table, right? Because we have
Yes.
someone's got to give them share certificates too, right?
Right, so we'll help you do that too. You may need to amend your bylaws to say that, to allow for non-certificated shares. There's some really common things that a lot of companies will need to do. Provide that amendment, and then also create the shares. But yeah, then you'll line it up, and we've got a lot of information about that, but yeah, that's gonna be something you're gonna want to do with yourself, maybe with your lawyer, whatever you need. And with some companies, the reason it's not complicated is because they already have that very buttoned up, so it's for them just a matter of plugging it in. With other companies who aren't really sure, it becomes more complicated.
Sounds like a blockchain opportunity.
So it's not as like cut and dry as saying like you invest $1,000, you get like 1% of the company, or is that like up to like or is that up to like the founder?
That is up to the founder. You could make it that easy if you
Yeah.
wanted to.
Okay.
But you would,
Do you see things, what do you normally see? Or is it like, oh, it's different for everybody, or do you normally see, well, $1,000?
It's all based on your pre-money valuation.
right, which is why you really could do, so if with a low enough valuation, $1,000 could get you 1% of the company.
But it all, because it
If you're an
depends on whether you have
LLC,
300,000 or you have $1 million raised. You don't know what percent they're going to get. Depends on how
Well,
much
no,
money's
because
raised.
if you offer a minimum and a maximum of what the use of proceeds is, so you can set a valuation and then you continue to own whatever percentage of the company you don't sell. So the company would actually still be the same value, you'd be getting the same percentage of the value of the company, regardless of how much is invested. So maybe 300,000 gets purchased by the new investors, there's still 700,000 worth of value that you continue to own. But that being said, the 1%, like the percentages is super, I've never seen it, it's very unlikely. The most common way of doing it is doing straight equity, non-voting common shares. So that's the most popular.
Really?
With us.
Okay, because when I was looking through a lot of different deals, and a lot of were notes, convertible notes also.
There's a few. We don't have that many on StartEngine though, so you might have been looking at other platforms. We do.
Yeah.
I mean, convertible notes are popular too.
Yeah, and I would see that would be the better way, especially if you don't, I mean, some people have a set pre-money valuation, but a lot of times, especially software-based, convertible note is because of the fact that you don't have a pre-money valuation, and that valuation is set upon the next funding round, right? So when the note...
Yeah, if that's how you want to do it, we actually have a lot of entrepreneurs who are excited about needing evaluation.
Just giving that.
Yeah.
Excited about
About setting a valuation, yeah. And it feels, I think, for example, like with Golfboard at an $8 million valuation, now the company's valued at $20 million. So the math is really simple for the people who have invested. They're really excited to learn that when we get an email that says that something that was worth $8 million is now worth $20 million. That's easy for them to figure out.
What percentage of your campaigns are non-voting?
I don't have the percentage. I should.
Sorry about that.
Is it more than 50%?
Oh, that are non-voting in general, regardless of the type?
Yeah.
Probably 90.
Wow.
Yeah.
People don't have a problem with that, huh? Jeez.
They don't seem to want to tell you how to do, I mean, what I would do really is make sure you have a monthly newsletter to let them know what's going on and take polls, that's great. Like, let them tell you what they think, but you don't have to run your company on that.
Marketing newsletters, I assume the email and contact information is domiciled here, we go through the portal, email through.
We actually don't have that service yet. We have gotten a few requests for it. We give you all the emails and then you can do whatever it is you want to do with them. So right now we have a lot of companies that are just using MailChimp. MailChimp? Yeah, because they used MailChimp when they first were working with us and they just kept for the database.
But it is a database that you download, you don't give us hard copies and stuff, do you?
No, we're not gonna mail you.
Right,
No,
that's good.
yeah, we'll just send you CSV of all the information. But only once the money has been dispersed, which means that you have countersigned the agreement, taken their money, and that's, the deal is done. Okay. Okay, marketing. So I'm gonna go really light on this one, because you're about to hear from Megan about it, but this is just some of the important things that we've noticed with marketing. Even though we're not a marketing company, and we can't be a marketing company legally, we can't be a portal and then also do your marketing for you. So whatever marketing that we do for your company, we also do for every other company, and we have to have very clear guidelines. So even if we highlight a few companies in our newsletter, for example, we have to choose based on an arbitrary, maybe a vertical or some sort of value of the company, and then say we're gonna share with you our vertical to watch is fashion, and then we'll list every fashion company. So we'll find groups that can maybe be 3 or 4, and most companies get featured at least a few times. Every company gets a feature when they launch and when they're closing, and every company gets to spend a week on our homepage carousel. So there's certain things like that that we do at StartEngine, but we can't be the ones sending out your marketing just for you that knows why. More marketing. Here's a few things that some of our favorites have done. Rayton Solar, that's the solar company I mentioned with Bill Nye. They did paid media, had an online influencer, posted updates, repeated one message like all the time. They've basically figured out which ad did the best, and then it's just everywhere all the time, and that works. And they're very consistent. Golf board, the terms of valuation were a big selling point for this. They got great PR because of their deal. They were written up in, they had an $8 million valuation, and then during their campaign, they had a $2 million revenue day, which was pretty incredible for them. And it was during the valuation, so then they were written up in articles on NASDAQ, some other really well-read publications, and within a couple days, there was no more opportunity because they were sold out. Jetpack. This is an actual jetpack. I don't know if you guys have seen this guy. Yeah, it's real. It's really cool. So he created a lot of content videos, which was great. He also had really interesting perks. If you invested the most, then you could be the first person to go on a ride with him on it, whenever that becomes legal, which will not be for a long time. And then Saunders had a 12-day closing countdown, which I thought was really interesting. They basically said, hey, everybody, we're going to email you every day for the next 12 days to get ready for that. And then they did. They emailed them every day, and they got a really successful last few days. Okay, and we're going to do more of that. This is our full service. Basically, we'll provide additional assistance. This is not required, and I'll talk with you, anybody who's interested in this, separately, just to kind of review what we do. It's really popular with people in LA because we have workshops periodically, but out here, I imagine that would be tough for some of you guys to get to.
Is this the consulting service that you mentioned?
Yes, it's our consulting service. So it's more focused on just helping you, kind of hand-holding you through the whole process and making sure that for those who don't have as much support in other areas, that we can provide that for you. We're trying to make it so that a company that's very, very small with no capital can get started, and a company that's much larger that doesn't have the ability to do as much on their own also has the support they need. All right, so to follow up on what Kinsey has already told all of you guys. I'm just going to be speaking shortly on some marketing secrets for successful crowdfunding. We're going to be focusing on equity, but I will weave a little bit of rewards-based crowdfunding in as well. So for those of you who don't know, we are Enventys Partners here. I originally started with Command Partners about 3 years ago. We started when I was here with 12 employees. We're now in this building, and I think with Enventys Partners we have over 50. So it's been a really, really whirlwind few years, and it's awesome. We merged with Enventys, so now in addition to offering marketing and crowdfunding, we can also offer prototyping, product development, distribution, basically everything that you need to launch a new product. So, first what I want to talk about is what you can and can't say, because that's the most important thing when figuring out how to market your campaign. Before launch for a small OPO, you are not allowed to do any kind of public announcement. So you can't post something on Facebook saying, an equity crowdfunding campaign's coming. You can't even do a teaser, like something big's coming, but we can't tell you what. You really have to keep it pretty tight-lipped. You can talk to your friends, but you can't do any kind of email list preview or anything that can be traced back, because that's against the SEC rules. Another big thing is you are not allowed to prime the market. So let's say you're a totally new company, you haven't done anything on Facebook, you have no audience. We recommend you start about at least 6 weeks prior to launching the campaign, because you're not allowed to make it seem like you're priming the market for your offering. So if you want to do regular marketing, that's fine. Build up your email list, build your Facebook likes, grow an audience, totally fine, but start early, because the SEC cannot see it as you prepping the market for your campaign.
Question. If you are, quote unquote, running a company in, call it a test market phase, and you've got, vehicles with signs on it and logos, and that's okay. I mean, if you're at, but you can't talk about the offering itself and what's coming.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can do absolutely everything you normally would. If you have TV commercials running, fine. Radio commercials, cool. Facebook ads, everything, as long as it's not saying anything about your offering. So after launch, you can communicate without details. So let's say you're running an advertisement. Later in here we'll talk about like a little widget campaign for a fake company. So let's say you're running Facebook ads for your widgets. You can talk about the widgets, you can drive traffic to the page, you can't mention the terms of the deal. If you want to talk about the terms of the deal, all you can speak about is tombstone information, and we'll get to that on the next slide. And it's very, very basic, cut and dry. This is what we do, this is what we're offering, here's when it runs until, that's it. So if you're speaking about that, you can't say, this is a great investment, you can't say, we're changing people's lives or anything like that. It has to be very black and white. So it's hard for us on the marketing side, because our role is to twist everything into making it, as shiny and as great as possible. So that's something that we find that's really difficult. And then you are allowed to announce once you launch without the terms as well. So you can post something on Facebook and say, our Start Engine campaign just launched today, go to the platform for more details. So it's kind of like what Kinsey was saying about, you can have the iPad there that has all of the information. You can go up to someone and say, hey, here's the information, it all lives here. You can do the same thing online. You just can't talk about it off of the platform.
So I was thinking of, and literally, I was thinking about sending out an email that says, hey, sign up on our email list on how you can invest and spend with. So can't do that.
So I think you could, and Kinsey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you can do is send out a notice that says, learn more about our Start Engine campaign, or learn how you can become an investor on Start Engine, but that's it.
Well, you're talking about before. So beforehand, you can't say, find out about investing.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you can say, we're raising capital, you get to, help us grow. You just can't say the terms that Megan's talking about which is the price per share and the length of time that it's going to be raised. So if you want to give them like the details of what they're buying into, then that's got to be just through the platform. But in your email, after you've launched, you can say some flowery stuff about how great it is.
So here is the Tombstone language. So Kinsey actually provided me with this awesome widget company. It's very basic, and if you are including any kind of information like this is all you can say. So you can't, especially from us on the marketing side, you can't say, these widgets are a game changer, or we are the next big widget company. Nope, very basic. This is what they do. They come in red, white, and blue. We've been around since July 4th, 1776. We're selling our common shares at 1776. Of course, we'll remain open until this July 4th, and that's it. You can't say anything else, and that's really, really important because the SEC will get you for violating these. And then one thing I missed on the previous slide, which we will talk about, is that you do have to follow all of this, all these guidelines for public relations and social media and ads. All right, so now we know what we can and can't say. Let's move in to what you're gonna wanna do. So to start with paid advertising, because we think that's one of the most important things. One thing is investor-specific advertising. So I think this is gonna be a little bit about what you were talking about. We have worked with third parties in the past where you are advertising banner ads on specific websites that investors may frequent. So for example, we had a transportation company. They had banner ads running after the campaign launched on a separate investment website. And it was just like, hey, here is a $1.3 billion market for smart cars. Click here for more information on how to become an investor. That was it. From that, we got about, I think, 7,500 leads, which is great. And that's something that you're going to want to do because you also want to focus other advertisements to the consumer. So you're going to have to split your focus a little bit and focus on getting investors to drive to the campaign, but also getting consumers so that these potential investors see the market validation and see that there's a market for this product. So you can do Facebook advertising as well to the offering page. What we recommend and we typically do is we'll split that. We will spend a certain amount of budget on Facebook likes and engagement. So again, when a potential investor comes to the page or Googles your product, they see that people care, that people are going to buy this, and such. So the other half, again, you're going to drive traffic to the page. You can't say, again, anything about the terms. You can say, for example, these are our widgets. They're red, white, and blue. For more information, visit StartEngine. You can say, for more information on how to become an investor in our widget company, visit StartEngine. But you really can't say anything about the product and the campaign together. And then again, like I already said, you can advertise for social growth, which we find is really important, and also advertise to your customer base. So as Kinsey said, ideally a lot of these investors are going to be your customers as well, but you want to show investors that you have a pre-order list or you have orders coming in if your product already exists. So that's something that's really important. You can't just focus on your investors like we would in a regular crowdfunding campaign. So you can't just focus on your backers. You have to focus on everyone as a whole.
So it's okay on our website, we could put the Tombstone language and even put a link to the StartEngine.
So I believe what you would want to do there is create just a separate pop-up landing page with the terms and the link to the StartEngine campaign. You wouldn't want to include that language on your existing website.
Yeah, so you would choose, basically. You'd either choose Tombstone language with the details, which might be what you want to do, or you'd choose to just have a banner or something that didn't have the language and made it. It just would probably depend on what your creative choice. If you wanted to forego terms and just go for the flowery, exciting stuff and just have none of it, or if you'd want a tombstone. The problem with tombstones is that, as Megan showed, is that they don't even have color.
Yeah, they're not exciting, which is what they're designed to be.
Exactly.
But it's nothing that really is going to convince someone to want to invest in your product.
The link to the StartEngine campaign, I clicked on one where it was a subdomain, then it transferred to the campaign. So it was the company's subdomain that clicked over.
Mhm.
But that's what they were advertising. So is there a rule against what link you can advertise?
No, not that I know of, because I know we use tracking links in our advertisements, and sometimes
So
those
if I
will
wanted
take
to
you.
be invest.spinwith.in,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
it goes to and that's the link that I give out.
As long as the link takes you to the Start Engine page,
Okay,
that's the only thing that's required.
okay.
So with Facebook ads, another thing that's really important for equity campaigns in terms of advertising is figuring out what is working for your market. So as some of you may be aware, Facebook ads have really, really great targeting options. And throughout the campaign, and even before the campaign, you can use these demographics, ages, genders, languages, even geo-targeting to really hone in on what investors are going to work best for you. So this is another reason we recommend beginning just general advertising before the campaign starts. So you can already narrow this down and go into the campaign with a pretty decent idea of what's going to work and what's not.
So, what is that on, that's your proprietary?
That's Facebook.
This is Facebook, yeah.
Facebook?
Yep.
Never used
Yeah.
it.
And I can email you guys, Kinsey and I will email you guys these slides, so you'll have all of this information.
Good.
But I'll let you do.
Wow.
How much is a Facebook ad, just generally?
It really just depends. Danny, you want to, he's our ads expert here.
Yeah, so it just kind of depends who you're targeting, how large the audience is. But yeah, you can get anywhere between 10 cents a click up to like $1.50 a click, I'd say. Just kind of depends.
All right, so moving on to social media. Again, one of the most important things for Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn is focus on your community and your social growth. So you can kind of focus on investors, but it's going to be more important to show the investors that you have a community that cares and that's interested. So you can do this in a few different ways. Like I said, we like to use some Facebook budget, even on social posts, just to encourage engagement. You can run contests, you can ask people questions. I'll show you an example of a campaign that we ran in the past. But you really just want to post meaningful content to consumers. In every post, you can link to the Start Engine campaign. You don't have to say anything about the campaign. You can just say, learn more about our widgets. But you want to post things that are going to be more meaningful to the consumers. Because, of course, you're running this campaign right now, but you're going to have this account forever. So you want to build up your customer base to be useful for you for years to come. And then again, as I said, you can direct traffic to offering within the regulations. You just can't say a flowery language and terms in the same post. And you can post, again, how I said, about the offering, just can't say anything flowery. And then answering questions, engaging with the community, that's super important. We find that you want to be answering questions within timeliness, 24 hours, show investors that you have, that you take stock in what your potential customers are saying, really show that you have a great community. Because even though these investors aren't quite as interested in the community feel as a Kickstarter or Indiegogo backer might be, they still care. They could go about investing their money in a different way. They like the feeling of being a part of something, helping a startup grow. So you can't forget that as well. And then here, this is actually one of my favorite campaigns we ran a long time ago. It's a Kickstarter campaign, but it really does an awesome job of showing engagement and how to get people excited. This was a product that made tortillas out of like Keurig pods. So you just said, are you team flour or team corn? And I think within a few hours we got 123 likes, 20 shares, so that's 20 timelines that this is showing up on, and a ton of comments, and people got really, really into it. Another great thing to do with posts like this is to actually encourage people to like and comment and tag their friends to potentially win things, and we can get into that in a little bit as well. But you just want people, anyone who comes to your page, you want to show them that people are excited, they're interested, and they're invested in this.
What's the success of having an incentive base? I mean, because when I think incentive, I always think of Kickstarter, but in this case, the incentive is equity in the company.
Yeah.
So throwing incentives on with that. I mean, how many of the that companies are doing that actually?
So, I mean, you can speak to StartEngine specifically, but we recommend all of our equity campaigns offer perks as well.
Okay.
Yeah, every marketing company always does. I'd say about 50 to 60% do it, but it's definitely, we've seen that it correlates with the successful rates. Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about, making the investor feel like they're really important and part of a community. I'm working with a client that will launch their campaign in a few months, and we're developing their perks. And as they go up, you know, if you, let's say, invest $2,000, you become part of like a design group where you can give the founders ideas on how to design the next iterations of their product. So just making people feel valued and important and getting something for their money.
40 foot by 40 foot in the sidewall studio that we use for.
All right, so community management. You want to post interesting and exciting updates. So StartEngine gives you the capabilities to reach out to not only everyone that's invested, but everyone that's followed your campaign, which is really great. A campaign we ran with StartEngine recently, I think at one point they only had like 25 investors, but they had over 100 people following it. They just weren't really sure whether or not they wanted to push the button yet. So we recommend, and I think Kenzie would agree, you want to post an update about every 48 hours. What Saunders did with their 12-day countdown is awesome. It does get tough during a 60 to 90-day campaign to keep thinking of things to post, but you can do, you know, you can say, look, TechCrunch covered us, something like that. You can talk about contests, which we'll get into in a minute. You can feature investors and why they've decided to invest, all kinds of stuff like that. We also recommend that you encourage your community to share. So what we would do in updates every single time is create a Facebook link, a Twitter link, a LinkedIn link, all of the copy so that the investor, all they had to do is copy and paste it onto their social networks, and they would blast out the campaign information as well. So just any way organically that you can get to spread the word is awesome. So like I said, contests are a great way to get people involved, and I'll show you a good screenshot of a contest that Saunders ran. But that's awesome and relatively inexpensive way to potentially make a campaign go viral. And again, you just want to make investors feel valued and important. Off the platform, email marketing is a great way to nurture your audience, and this is again something that you should probably start before the campaign launches when you're getting people's emails. You don't have to mention anything about StartEngine or the campaign that you're running, but really just nurture your audience, show them that you care, give them meaningful info. So we like to run drip campaigns, so you sign up and you might get an introduction the first time, the next email is a little bit of a deeper dive, something specific about the company or the product, and you go from there. And once the campaign launches, you can keep them updated on the campaign as well. You just have to follow the regulations. All right, so this is an example actually of an update and a contest that Saunders ran. They had already ran a campaign for their electric bikes, and they knew that there was a huge market for that. So they ran a Gleam campaign, right, Kenzie, I assume? Yeah, a Gleam campaign, which is just a viral marketing tool where the more people that you share this with and the more times you enter, you are actually entered to win a bike. People that are interested in Saunders love the founder. He's like kind of a quirky guy. So they also ran a contest later in the campaign, or maybe a separate one, to win a trip out to California to hang out with him. So it's really, really valuable if you have something good to offer. A lot of times these founders might not have a product yet, so they can't give something away, so it doesn't always work. But you can, I remember someone from StartEngine recommending, because we were focusing on families for our campaign, that we give away a trip to Disney World. I mean, if you're willing to pay the money, it really can be anything. And it's a great way to just get your campaign out to new eyes that might not see it otherwise. All right, so on the PR side, you're going to want to do press releases for key milestones, so campaign launch, potentially first closing. Everything with PR, press releases included, is super, super tricky because you have to fall within those guidelines. And a lot of times, journalists might not know about the guidelines, they might not care because it has nothing to do with them. You can follow every rule in your interview, but you can't control what they're going to post in their content. So that's something that we've seen in the past is really, really tricky. So if you want to get around that, we like to focus on coverage of the company and the product and not really focus on the campaign. You can ask them to link to the campaign because in the end, that's what you want. You want direct traffic to the campaign page. But you could just focus on pitching your company story, pitching your founder's story, pitching what your product can do, and not really that much about the Start Engine campaign. And again, you can use the coverage as market validation just as you would your Facebook community or your social audience. And here are just a list of outlets that we like to try to get all of our campaigns featured in, which doesn't always work, of course, but just wherever, you want to focus on online outlets because it's going to be the easiest way to direct people to the campaign page. So while print is great, especially for some investors, this is just going to be easiest for you to direct traffic. So, in conclusion, the most important thing is to always stay within the SEC guidelines, regardless of whether you're doing paid advertising, organic social media, public relations, community management, whatever. You always have to stay within the guidelines. You're going to want to focus on growing your investor list and also driving traffic, but you can't forget to grow and engage your audience because those are going to be the people that are there for your campaign, but also there after your campaign. And those are also going to be the people that buy your product, growing the valuation, and make your investors successful. So you don't want to lose focus of the smaller people that might not be investing. Does anyone have any questions? Awesome.
Well, so how much is your service?
So it really all depends. I'd be happy to set you up with Roy to discuss that. It really depends what you want to use us for. So full cert, equity is a little bit different because we're required by law that we can't take funds from companies raising money in certain ways. So it would most likely be on some sort of monthly retainer with maybe an initial startup fee, but it would really all depend on what services you needed.